So I'm actually here to pick up Blubski. Just drove black M3 from home after working on that a little bit, but gonna move the dehumidifier and back it out, and I'm gonna drive it over and spend the night with it and drive it back out here. The show's actually only about 5 miles from where the car is right here, but I'm gonna drive it 40 miles instead because I hate myself. But anyway, I'm gonna fire it up and drive it home, and we'll see how it goes. But I'll try to kind of go over a little bit of the drive to and from, and I might wash it tomorrow morning a little bit and kind of go over it at the show a little bit too, just kind of see how it goes. But I'll consider this more of a maiden voyage for a little more serious driving. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully well. The transmission's still holding together. This is transmission number 3 with bits of transmission number 2 in it. Currently it isn't leaking at all, which is great. Throttle response still isn't very good on the engine, just because we haven't really had time to dig in and deal with the throttle position sensor signal. It cruises really well because the ECU kind of defaults to the manifold air pressure signal and just kind of works with that. But I'll stop talking and get this thing out of the garage. It's just a boring cold start at this point, but it'd be stupid not to do it, right? Actually, I gotta shut down the laptop. The battery's good, but it's not that good. 450 RPM idle when it's cold. We'll see if it'll stay running even. I'm not sure. I do have the idle control valve in this car now, but it's not calibrated correctly. I don't have a diode in it, which it needs, unfortunately. So not getting a perfect idle until that happens. But I gotta unplug the laptop and then I'll back this thing out. Well, she's staying running. I haven't touched the gas yet after firing up, so idle's very low and in gear, but she moves. Now I gotta bring the black M3 and put it inside. This thing sure drives nice too. Good night, my pretties. Hello, my ugly. So at this point, I'm just gonna hop in her and drive the 20 miles to my overnight, and hopefully it goes alright. I'll probably fire the video up at least once on the drive home just to kind of ask or tell you guys how it's going. I'm expecting it'll be uneventful, but you never know with this car. So here we are in a 40-year-old German car with a 2-year-old DIY engine computer with a tune that I made, put together by a person who has no idea what the hell they're doing, and it's running. It drives just fine, especially when you're not being hard on it. The transmission throttle linkage cable isn't adjusted properly, so it always assumes the engine throttle is very low, which makes the shifts very smooth, but it's not good for when you're hard on the gas. You get a little bit of flare between shifts. But it doesn't overheat, it shifts nicely. The GPS speedometer, you guys can see, is currently at 0. It probably lost its GPS fix, but it should come back. My only real gripe here is that the final drive is so short. This is a 307 to 1 diff, but it has a 1 to 1 fourth gear, so no overdrive. But it drives really well. The car doesn't have heat, but it's 70 something degrees outside, so it is what it is. I was talking with my brother who actually bought the car originally, and I was trying to figure out why the heck we ended up doing this swap, or how we came up with the idea of the 117 engine. I think a lot of it was basically just we wanted it to be a Mercedes engine. We didn't want to drop a 350 in it because that was the easy way out. And we found, I think, a parts car, a 1989 560 SEL on our local Craigslist for $600 or best offer. And we just bought the car and kind of went from there. We ripped the 4-cylinder diesel out of this thing in 2009 and at the time I really didn't know what I was doing. So it took until January of 2014 for us to get the awesome space we just drove out of from my uncle, who's a huge car guy, and we started tearing into it. I knew a lot more about cars at that point, so it was a little less frightening to get into it. Oh, there comes the speedometer. Usually it's a little quicker than that, but we're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it started with basically the EFI build was first and foremost. We had to get this thing running on EFI, and now it runs pretty well, so I really don't have any complaints, other than the fact that the wiring I did on the throttle position sensor is not working properly. The hardest parts of the swap, honestly, it was the exhaust. That was really the hard part. Getting the engine mounted in the car really wasn't that bad. We didn't do any fancy figuring with distances or anything like that. It's very much eyeballed. This thing's actually running BMW E30 325i solid engine mounts, and it's running a billet aluminum block that I cut down from an E30 BMW engine mount as the trans mount, and it works surprisingly well. We have the drive shaft. It's a factory 560 SEL front drive shaft, shortened I think like 28 inches or something nuts. And then it's got the factory 240D rear drive shaft. The splines fit right together. We never did balance it, but I mean, we've allegedly had this car at pretty high speed, and it hasn't had any issue with vibration or anything like that. And we haven't destroyed either the front or rear flex coupling yet, so I will let you guys know when that happens, but as of this point, the car has been shockingly reliable. The cooling system has been kind of a problem from the get-go. Originally, when we got this car running, we had the original 240D radiator, which is single core brass all the way through, and we really couldn't even drive the car on the highway with that thermal envelope. So I went on eBay of all places, and I googled, I guess, eBay search aluminum radiator, and I found one that was a top to bottom flow, and it was approximately the right dimensions, and it turned out to be for a 57 Bel Air Chevy, and ordered it up, was able to mount it without any issue. Oh, those are bright, wow. And it more or less fits with some universal hoses, but the cooling is really not a problem unless you're sitting in stop and go traffic on a hot day at this point. So, and there's an MR2 Spider and a Miata in front of me here, so I'll pause the video. So here we are, cruising down the highway at, I guess, 60, kind of a construction zone in Blubski. Coolant temp is right in the middle of the gauge. Have oil pressure, have a fuel reading, although it's not accurate. The car is a little darty on center with the steering. I'm not sure if that's gotten worse since I cut the springs. The alignment isn't perfect, and you know, the ball joints and control arms are probably 30 years old on this car, so it is what it is. However, all things considered, it drives really, really well. The ride quality is very, very good. It feels well composed. The power is really good when you lean into it, which is nice. I don't know, it's just a gorgeous night for a drive. Just gonna keep driving it, and I'm only about halfway through the journey here, but no sign of any issue yet, knock on wood. I'll maybe pick this up either when I stop or in the morning. So here we are in the morning. Car made it here just fine. Actually went downtown and parked next to all the street racers just to kind of see what they were doing last night. Didn't race anyone, but I at least gave them a decent show of acceleration, so. She likes cold starts, so we're off and running. We're heading to the car wash now. So here we are at the DIY car wash. We'll see how it looks when it dries. It may actually be a little bit better than it was. We'll see. First wash the car's really had in a long time. Well, the show is a success. Lots of people, old and relatively young, liked the car. I didn't hear any negative comments about Blubski, so that's a win. Just driving it back home now to park it. Made it back in one piece. He loves to die another day.